most importantly, Jonathan Rea is going to be out there as well. He had a technical problem in free practice 1, so he was only able to do about 10 laps in the morning.
Yes, restricted running for Jonathan. Position 2.4 seconds down on Toprak Razgatlioglu. Now, nobody needs to be alarmed at this point. There's a long way to go before we even start scoring 2021, but it's far from the way that Rea would have liked to get underway with this weekend, and it's a startling contrast to Toprak Razgatlioglu.
Yeah, Toprak's got that experience under his belt of knowing the track now, but for Jonathan Rea with 10 laps, he'll also feel like he's got his way around the track, he's got his bearings, but it is going to be a case of, in this session, really trying to get a lot of laps in under his belt for Rea. This is going to be a little bit interesting though as well, because traditionally through the course of this season, we've seen in the Friday afternoon sessions, Rea hasn't done the longer runs. He's tended to do a couple of shorter runs, whereas it's Toprak that's done the longer run. That could play into Toprak's hands.
Razgatlioglu had a little bit of swagger about him, didn't he, in this side? For him, he is the series leader, and by a 30-point margin, but no signs of nerves.
Yeah, it doesn't look nervous at all, and for everyone around Toprak, they've said the same thing, that he just wants to win the races this weekend, and
there's not much of a pattern as far as the order behind the leader, Razgatlioglu.
Well, I don't think there's anything you can really read into the free practice 1 times other than the fact that Toprak was willing to push hard right from the outset, because we were fully after a session out on track in these kind of conditions.
Yes, Locatelli, I think, doing his best Davros impression, wasn't he, in between the 2 sessions here today. Free practice 2 underway then, and Toprak Razgatlioglu now boards his steed, so he's not even lost a full lap compared to the rest of the field that are just completing their installation laps at present. Toprak playing for the gallery. Still a long way to go this weekend, but he'll be hoping to get the job done here tomorrow morning.
Yeah, you can see that for Toprak, even down pit lane at the pit lane speed limit, still quite keen just to make sure he's able to get a little bit of pressure into those tyres and get them up to temperature as quickly as possible. And for the likes of Jonathan Rea, you can see here now in the number 1 Kawasaki, this is a really important session, because he lost out in so much running in this morning's session. He was only out on track for 15 minutes, spent the rest of the time in the pit lane. So for Rea, this is very important to be able to get himself up to speed. That's where it'll be really important for him to at least see Alex Lowe's go second fastest. He'll be able to use some of the information from the other side of the pit box.
Great statistical comparison between the top 2 in our 2021 World Championship. As I said previously, Toprak Razgatlioglu with a 30-point lead to defend. The 2 riders equal in terms of podium finishes. Toprak with the edge in terms of race victories. Crucially, his edge has also been over the feature-length races. A lot of Jonathan Rea's victories have come over the Superpole race on a Sunday morning, and the points that are paid out for that race are not as significant as they are for the feature-length races themselves, which is what gives Razgatlioglu a significant advantage. It also gives him an advantage in the case that we get a tie in the World Championship final score.
Yeah, and obviously for Toprak, we've seen it all the way through this year that he's been able to manage his tyres really well on that Yamaha. That's been the strength for them. It's a very adaptable bike to a lot of different conditions. That's been good for them. Got good top speed, obviously with Toprak really strong on the brakes, and that's been one of the big difference makers this season. We've seen with the Kawasaki that they've been a little bit hamstrung this year. Obviously, the big talk over the winter was that Kawasaki lost their testing 500 revs that they were using in the test sessions, and suddenly when we went to the first round, that seemed to put them at a bit of a handicap. And as the season's worn on, you'd certainly look at it and say that the Kawasaki, while in the past was always regarded as the outright package to be on, that may not be the case anymore. The Yamaha clearly has made big steps forward in that regard.
As we watched Isaac Viñales there making his way through the final turn, had a little bit of a moment, but he got it together to cross the line, and despite that momentary error and the shaking of the head that followed for the number 32, he is among the riders who has immediately set a new personal best for the weekend on their first lap round in free practice 2, as Viñales just disappears there out of the back of the shot. Free practice 2, Alex Lowe's straight up and running, a 1 minute 35.167, and Scott Redding is also now into the 1 minute 35s. Hani, Viñales, Mercado, Nozane, all improving on what they were able to do earlier on today. We haven't yet seen the first time for Toprak Razgatlioglu, but it's not going to be a particularly fast one. He's a second down at the halfway mark, just building himself up in this session. Tell you who is looking good at this stage on his latest lap, and that's Alex Lowe's 3/4 3/4 of a second up at the halfway mark, and 1:35.167 his fastest time in this session, and that should mean, although it won't mean because he's just dropped time through sector 3, but he's very much on the kind of pace to be able to challenge Razgatlioglu's time from FP1.
Yeah, it looks like he caught a bit of traffic in the middle of the lap. Taddy Mercado on track alongside him. You can see Mercado now just behind those, but it does bode well for the Kawasaki rider. He's only 0.2 of a second slower than Toprak's time from this morning, so you'd expect to see Toprak's time eclipsed pretty quickly in this session.
Toprak himself crossing the line, moves 10th in this session. He's one of the few, well, he's the only rider in the top 10 who hasn't yet improved on what they did earlier on today, as Alex Lowe's completes his lap, losing time in the third sector, as we said. Jonathan Rea also losing that lap going away from him in the second half of it, but he too was up by 0.2 after the second completed sector, so that would have put him in line to challenge Toprak's time from earlier on here today, as Michael Ruben Rinaldi crosses the line to move P2. So a lot of change up in the pecking order in this FP2, as you expected.
Yeah, and for Rinaldi, still 0.6 of a second off those times, so a little bit of ground for him to make up. Just seeing Gareth Gerloff had a time deleted. He had moved
Wsbk from 2022 onwards. In the meanwhile, back to free practice 2. Still
importantly, talking to his electronics engineer as well. He wants Davide to know exactly what that bike is doing for him. Looked like he was talking about when he closes the throttle and gets on the brake. So for Jonathan Rea, that's the one area where he's clearly trying to make a little bit of progress for right now.
Plenty of laps though put in by Jonathan Rea.
Yeah, a dozen laps on that stint, and we saw the stint summary as well. There was a couple of slow laps. We obviously saw one lap where he sat up to let Toprak through. Everything else though pretty much down inside those 1:35, so I think he'd aged 1:35 laps, so that's decent pace right from the outset considering the lost track time in the opening session.
Plenty of riders in the pits at the moment. Scott Redding just completing his latest lap, still running out there and still within a couple of tenths of a second of his fastest in this session. Michael Ruben Rinaldi just on his way towards a first flying lap of his latest stint. Rider comparison here in towards the spectacular turn 10, that beachfront view.
Yeah, you could see there for Scott Redding, he was really floating into that corner as well, and he was using the engine braking of that Ducati to good effect, and a little bit different for Chaz Davis, a little bit more stable. You can see for Gareth Gerloff, he's actually got that bike more of an angle on the entry down in towards that corner, but very different styles needed on the Ducati and the Yamaha, and obviously we've seen one Yamaha rider with a very different style in the run down in towards turn 10 in the shape of Toprak Razgatlioglu, so it does show that there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat.
Every circuit has its iconic corner, doesn't it? We always talk about the wall in
Chris Ponson as well. He's had some great performance. I think back to Catalunya, finishing inside the top 9 in the Superpole race. It shows that the Yamaha package as a whole can work really well. Toprak's just able to get the absolute most out of it.
Yes, he has been able to demonstrate that once again in free practice 2. He leads the way on a 1:34.230. Jonathan Rea just 0.2 of a second behind him. Andrea Locatelli best of the rest. Down to Anthony in pit lane.
Thanks, Alex. Down in the Aruba Ducati box here with Marco Zambenedetti and Marco. We've seen the Ducatis be strong in the past in these sort of extreme heat conditions, like Jerez last year, Navarra this year. But with the track as slippery as it is right now, what's the feedback been from the riders?
Yeah, but sure, in FP1, track must improve a lot during the session. We put some gearing, final gear ratio, and we compare at the end of the session different riders. For the moment, it seems that the so high temperature doesn't seem the biggest problem. It seems that the bike is working well. We just need to fix a couple of areas. But we are, in general, quite happy about the first feedback from the rider.
Thanks, Marco.
Thank you.
7.5 minutes remaining in free practice 2. Jonathan Rea, a 1/4 of a second down on his latest lap coming into the final sector, loses further ground in sector 4. That's been a trend compared to Razgatlioglu throughout the day, that final sector, that pretty much everyone losing time through that.
Yeah, and it is a leading positions. Had some podiums at the start of the year. I give Leon Haslam a bit too much credit there. Front row for Haslam, not a podium. I just remember him down in Park Ferme a couple of times, but certainly for Gareth Gerloff, hopefully this is the sign of what we're going to see from him again next year. We want to see him up at the front of the field. He's an exciting rider. He's obviously had some tough times through the course of this season, but you want to see him able to show exactly what he can do on a superbike.
Yes, Haslam's had a P4 and a P5. That's close enough. And a P4-5, I'm afraid, as far as next season is concerned, as he's set to move on from Wsbk. 3 minutes still on the clock for FP2. Wsbk, the fastest man out there, but Jonathan Ray has chipped away at that margin. Garrett Gerloff also very much on the pace, and Leon Haslam with that stunning effort to go P4. Alex Lowe's currently rounds out the top 5. We come in now to the final laps from all of our big guns. Michael van der Mark just setting a new personal best, 1 minute 34.938.
Yeah, so we've got the leading
over a longer distance over the course of tomorrow.
Yeah, well, he's been able to put in 3 pretty fast laps in a row there, 34.4 and then a 30.
And have time for one more in the remainder of free practice 2. It is Reading who is at the moment the only rider on the move as far as the front runners are concerned. Chaz Davies has just made up a couple of positions, but only into P15, so work for him to do over the course of this weekend. Reading crosses the line to go P5, splits Bautista and Haslam in the pecking order. 1:34.579, Scott Redding's time, 3.5 tenths of a second down on Wsbk. We ride on board now.
Yeah, Reading actually fastest of all in Sector 3 as well now, so he's been able to
improve on his final lap. He's lost over a second through Sector 2 after being 7 thousandths of a second up through Sector 1. Wsbk there exiting the final turn and crosses the line to complete his session and see the checkered flag with a 1:34.612. So a little bit slower than his previous lap, but he's not going to mind too much about that. Wsbk got this session, he's got Friday sewn up here at the Mandalika International Circuit, and with a series of stunning laps faster than his nearest rival, Jonathan Ray.
Yeah, and what's going to be interesting is to see that for Toprak, he's fast in each of the sectors, very fast. Yeah, we've seen the likes of Epis and Crescent. He actually found 4.5 seconds in this session, so he's made a big step forward from this morning. Obviously, enough track conditions have improved a lot, but for Oliver, he's also trying to learn how to ride a World SBK bike. This is his first outing on a World SBK spec bike. He has ridden a superbike in the Endurance World Championship.
Yes, but even then, for only a fairly limited spell, having jumped straight up from Supersport 300.